Hello everyone, I'm Rajarshi Sengupta and we are here for a dye demonstration with natural dyes. So today we'll be doing dye demonstration with two primary dyes that is used, and what we will do is we'll try to go through some of the basic processes which are involved in making this dyed fabrics or textiles. So first we'll start with the washing, boiling and also preparing the fabric and yarn for dyeing, and after that we will get into the process of dyeing. So today we'll be looking into two kinds of dyes. One is black, the other one is red. So by red I mean the brick red, which is obtained from the Indian madder or manjishta, and then black is something that will be obtained from a combination of two things. One is of course myrobalan or haritaki, and then the other thing is a fermented iron and jaggery solution that has been fermented in this studio for more than a month, in which we have the fermented jaggery in water. So we have fermented iron jaggery which are measured almost around the same, and then they are put in around so I have taken around 1 kilogram of jaggery, 1 kilogram of iron, and then I have mixed it in around 5 liters of water and added little bit of salt, and then kept it fermented for a month or more than that. And it is also important that we consider the weather condition when we are fermenting this solution. So it is advised to do it in a warmer climate than sometime during the winter. So of course that the warmer climate always accelerates the speed of fermentation, and that is how we get the better color for dyeing, or the better black dye which will be used today. So what we will do is we'll start the process with boiling the yarn and fabric, and then we'll get slowly into the process. So here we started preparing the yarn, and for this thing the first step is to have the water. So the water here is tap water, and the pH is usually the balanced one, not really acidic or alkaline. And here we are boiling the water here, and we started boiling it in a mid flame. And of course that it takes a bit of time to boil the water. So when we are boiling the water, what we will do is we'll also add little bit of soda ash, and soda ash is this natural ingredient which is used for getting rid of the impurities in fabric. Also at the same time it helps with the dye absorption. So that's the reason it is profusely used in natural dyeing when the water is boiled, when the fabric or yarn is prepared. But also at the same time at times when certain kind of dyes which are developed in alkaline solution, soda ash being an alkaline agent, that is also added in the water for a better performance of the dyes. So we'll start slowly adding this soda ash. And of course one thing I must clarify at the beginning, that in a number of the natural dyeing demonstrations we have the importance, or we have the primacy of talking about the measurement. And you will find that I usually do not talk much about the measurement, and it is something that I believe it is always achieved when we do things repeatedly. Of course you will find that I will say that handful of soda ash or a handful of salt and things, so that way we will be talking about it. But the thing is that in this case what I have done is usually around 20 gram of soda ash I have added in around 3 liters of water, and that is good enough. But the thing is this is also something that one can understand, that once you start using this ingredient for repeated times, then you will probably get to know that how the measurement varies from person to person, and also it based on our preferences how it matters. So that's the reason I do not want to stress particularly on one recipe. Instead, I'll talk about the ingredients and I'll let everyone decide that what ingredients work best for them. So once we started boiling this solution with soda ash and water, we will also get the material which will be used for boiling here. So here you can see I have kept a piece of fabric that is bleached. That is the way I have bought this thing from the local khadi shop. And then what I have here, this is hand woven fabric, cotton fabric, and then I also have little bit of yarn here, and this is hand spun yarn from local cotton. And so this yarn and this fabric, both of them are not washed. So until they are washed, we will not consider them to be ready for using them in dyeing. So our first step will be to immerse them in this solution. Once the water reaches a particular temperature, we will start using them there. So now what we are going to do is, we will have this yarn and this fabric, both of them are unwashed. So we will put them in this boiling water for, of course, for degumming, but also at the same time for getting rid of the impurities those are there. So we will put them in the boiling water here, which is now being prepared with soda ash, and we will immerse them in the water. I will also control the heat. So it was already in the mid flame, but I will reduce the heat and make it in low. And I will let this sit in the water for around 10 minutes or so. So here what I'll start doing, when the fabric and the yarn is being prepared for dyeing, I will start preparing the mordant. And for mordant, what I'm using is natural alum. So alum, what is found in the mineral form, and I have powder alum, and I'll add the powder alum in warm water, and I'll keep stirring it until the alum gets dissolved. And after that, we'll also boil it, but the boiling will only come once the boiling of the fabric and the yarn is completed. So by that time, we will put the alum powder in this water and we'll keep it stirring a little bit, and then we will be boiling that solution. So for alum, usually the suggested ratio is 15 to 20% WOF, and WOF stands for weight of the fabric or the fiber. So in this case, of course, it will be the weight of the fiber, not the fabric, because we are also using yarn here. Now in this case, what happens is, when we have the yarn, so if the yarn here, the yarn and the fabric altogether, it weighs around 100 grams. So that means we will have the alum solution, the quantity of alum which should go in the water would be around 20 grams. So, and that is something that I have usually kept, but also, as I have mentioned, that I do not want to stress the proportion too much here, and so that we can find out our own preferred proportion for this dyeing processes. But please make sure that we are not going above 20%, because that can also have corrosive effect on the fiber or the fabric. So we'll keep it here and let the fiber boil in the water for a while. So here we are again, we'll just be checking this thing, that we started boiling the yarn and this fabric, and you can already see that how with time you will see that this kind of this slimy gooey substance is coming out of the fabric, and that is because of the starch and everything, those are added in the fabric. So once we keep boiling this, the fabric will get rid of all those impurities. And you can also, like, I mean, once you will touch it, once you will sort of wash it after this boiling, then you can also see that, I mean, how the fabric has become softer. And the softer fabric is also something that is much required for when we are doing the dyeing, because if there are impurities on the surface of the fabric, it always resists the dye from penetrating into the fabric. So that's the reason we need to get rid of them in order to have better result with whatever dyes we are using. So as we were doing the boiling of the yarn and the fabric, so it needs to be continued for 45 minutes. So we have been doing that, and now here what we are doing is we have already mixed the alum in the water, and we will be boiling this alum water for little bit, so that, I mean, the entire alum powder that we have tried to dissolve in the water gets completely dissolved. It's properly diluted in the water, so that can be used as a potent mordant for fixing the dyes in the fabric. So here what we will also do is we will dip the fabric in the alum, and then we will be putting that in the dye bath. So that is something we can do, or what we can do is we can put the fabric in the dye bath, and after that we can put that in the alum. So both these things can be possible. Now the thing is that, I mean, this is slightly different from modern painting or printing. In that case, what happens is we have the mordant, that is, first it is prepared, and then the mordant is then used on the fabric, and then only partly this is used on the fabric, either with the block or with pen or column. And then once that is used, then that is dried, completely dried, and then there is an elaborate process of washing it. So once the washing and drying, all those things are done, then only that is immersed in the dye bath. So in this case we are not doing that, because we want to dye the entire fabric in one color. So for that reason we did not go for this step of selectively sort of, like, I mean, using this mordant for, you know, like, I mean, making patterns or images. So here we can see that, I mean, the alum solution is already heated, and of course that, I mean, I do not suggest everyone to sort of put their fingers in the boiling water, but I mean, of course that, I mean, you can always see it from the fumes and from the vapors that is there on the surface, that, I mean, whether it has reached the desired temperature or not. And how do we understand that, I mean, the solution has reached its desired temperature or not? So that, I mean, we will see that, I mean, there is no residue in the pot. So if there is no residue or sediment in the pot that is sort of like collected at the bottom, then we can understand that, of course, that the entire alum solution has gotten into the water here. Alright, so as we have already mentioned that we started washing this fabric, so I have also added 2 more fabric pieces into it. And so after washing, so after keeping that simmering in that boiling water, in this lukewarm water, I should say, it's not really boiling water as such, and in which soda ash was already added. So in this one I have added these pieces of fabric, and then after that I have kept it for around 45 minutes. Then I have washed it in regular tap water, and then I have sun dried it. And when you're drying it, make sure that you are not really putting these fabrics on rust iron or any kind of metallic surface which might have reaction with this plain piece of fabric. So please try avoiding that. So once all those things are done and then it is sun dried, so this washed fabric which we have washed and boiled in this solution, so now this is ready for the next step. So the next step for cotton fabric will be to sort of like treat it with myrobalan solution. Now myrobalan or haritaki is a natural tannin rich agent. So for silk and for wool, this step is not necessary. Now for silk and wool, these two things are protein based fibers. But the thing is, for cotton and linen and hemp, this kind of plant based fibers, they do not really have that protein content. And that's the reason we need extra treatment for them to better absorb dyes. And cotton is also this fiber which is considered to be one of the hardest fibers in the entire world for dyeing. So for those reasons we need to follow certain procedure, and for that reason what we will do is we have this fabric here, and also we have the we also have the boiled and sun dried this yarn, that is hand spun yarn we have. So we will keep them here, and now we will start preparing this myrobalan solution. So in this case what we will do is, we already have the water, and I have added I haven't added. Now I'll be adding haritaki powder or myrobalan powder in this water. And again the water I have started in mid flame, and slowly once the water sort of heats up, I'll lower the flame, and then it will go in this low flame. I'll have to continue it for around 15 to 20 minutes. And in this case what I'll do is, again for myrobalan solution we usually have that 15% myrobalan in the water. So it's not really about the weight of the fiber, but it will be like, I mean, how much water we are putting. So in this case what I'll do is, I'll just put the myrobalan solution, not too much. So if it is around like, I mean, 15% of myrobalan solution, and here I have around 2 liters of water, so in that measurement I am putting the myrobalan solution here. But the thing is, I also don't want that the myrobalan solution to be too deep, then that also sort of like, I mean, leaves its own color into it. So I just want the myrobalan solution to have tannin content so that it can better absorb dyes, but I do not want it to be too intense for this process. So I have already added this myrobalan solution in this dye pot, and I'll keep it boiling for next 10-15 minutes, and meanwhile we'll just prepare the fabric for the next step of dyeing. So here what we are doing is, we are now preparing water. Now we will be preparing the dye bath for red. And for red what we will use Indian madder or manjishta. So I have already obtained powder manjishta. So that is, manjishta is usually this madder root, and madder root which is also found profusely in the Ayurvedic shops, and that's because of its medicinal properties. I mean, of course, that, I mean, similar to haritaki or myrobalan, it also has medicinal properties, and for that reason it is used and in Ayurvedic practices. Now what we will also see it here, that, I mean, I started boiling the water, and for the amount of manjishta what we will do it here is again around like, I mean, around 50% of the weight of the fiber, and I'll probably go a little more than that. Now the thing is that, I mean, for manjishta a lot of times the quality of manjishta also varies, and that's the reason to obtain this brick red color, or like the shades of brick red color, we need to have ample amount of this powder in order to make sure that we have the proper desired color in the fabric. So what we will start doing it here, that, I mean, I have around 3 liters of water in this pot. I started boiling it again in the mid flame. So for all this kind of boiling activities, we need to make sure that the water that is boiled here, the water that is prepared, is never really on high flame. So we need to start in the mid flame, and then you need to sort of go in the lower flame. It is never really in high heat one should be preparing the dye solutions. So I have started boiling the water here, and now I'll be adding the manjishta powder into it. So the manjishta powder, as you can see, it looks kind of brick red, and of course it is powdery in its outlook, and then it needs to be dissolved in water. So I suggest that once we start boiling the water, so the beginning of the process we should just add the manjista powder into it, so that we don't have to burn our hand, sort of mix the manjista solution when the water is really warm. So here of course that you can use a spatula or a spoon or a ladle for the entire purpose. So here what I'll do is I'll also try to show you the color of the water here, that how immediately the color sort of turns this brick red. But the thing is that a lot of time the one of the biggest challenge that happens is that even if we have this brick red color in the water, it does not get very easily translated in the fabric, and that's the reason one needs to be super cautious about how we are continuing with this process. So here I'll add little more of this manjista powder. As I have said that it should be around 50% or more of the weight of the fiber. So I'm making sure that the amount of manjista powder I'm putting here is sufficient for this purpose. We also need to get rid of the lumps which are there in the water, so that also needs to be maintained. I'll put a little more of that. So using manjista is also, in that sense we can think about it that probably in the first go we do not really get the proportion right, but the thing is that as I have mentioned that it should be around 50% of the weight of the fiber. But then it is also important that we understand that if the quality varies, then we might have to tweak this proportion little bit, the ratio. So that is something that we need to keep in mind whenever we are working. I'll use this spatula for mixing this powder in the water a little more, and I'll let it simmer for around half an hour, 45 minutes. Okay, so what we will do here, we already have this myrobalan solution which was boiled for around half an hour, and we have this solution here with us. So now what we will start doing is that it has already cooled down a bit. So here we will dip the yarn and the fiber, the fabric that we have. So we have the cotton yarn here, and we will start immersing that. So once you see that the yarn is dipped in this myrobalan solution, it immediately sort of receives this color of this solution, and one can also see the difference between them, that how this part that is undyed and this part is dyed here. And then we will also just put the undyed part of this in the water and continue the process, and then eventually just put it there in the water there. It needs to be in this solution for 10 minutes or so, so that it can soak the solution properly before we can make it in use. And here I'll also start putting the pieces of fabric here in the water. So I'm putting these 2 pieces of fabric. Then the next one. So the thing is that if someone wants to do tie-dye technique here, so one of the processes for doing that, if you do not really want any kind of dyes to penetrate in the fabric, so for tie-dye, if you want to just sort of protect this one part, and which will not be receiving any form of dye, so that can be tied at this stage or after the myrobalan treatment. So what I'll do is I'll try to demonstrate that by putting solution. I'm using regular cotton thread and I'll be tying that just manually as a basic process. So I'm just using cotton thread here, and what I'm doing is I'll just tying it here so that this area also does not receive any myrobalan, so that this area will probably not receive any form of dye. Just chop it with this piece of scissors. So this is how the fabric looks like. I have made a very simple this knot here, and now I'll be immersing that in this myrobalan solution. There it goes. When the fabric and the yarn is there in this solution, we also need to stir it at times so that if there is any kind of sedimentation, it should not get to this fabric or the fiber. Okay, so as we have already started boiling this mangishta or the madder solution here for dyeing, so what I'll do is I'll put little bit of soda ash in this solution here. So some people put soda ash in the mangishta or the madder solution, some people do not. Now the thing is that usually we have found that mangishta is something that develops better when it is slightly alkaline solution. So I'll not make it too alkaline, but little alkaline-ish here. So I'll add little bit of soda ash, not too much. And again, as I have mentioned that if I have said that handful of soda ash, so here I'm probably putting just little bit. So it will be like a teaspoon perhaps, not more than that. After putting this thing, I'll just stir it up, mix it properly with the dye solution so that it gets absorbed in this solution properly. For developing madder or mangishta, we usually avoid different kind of metals. So for example, in this case I am using steel, stainless steel. So stainless steel is all right, but it is believed that the copper vessels are the best, of course, for of course that we also have certain kind of mordants which are copper rich, and they also add to the vibrance of the color. So copper vessels are always preferred for developing red and in the Indian context. So the thing is that we see that copper is something that is used. Then we also have stainless steel. So stainless steel definitely does not react with the dye solution. So this kind of metal vessels can be used for developing these dyes. Now the thing is that we should not be using a direct iron vessel for developing red, because from iron what we have, that iron already reacts with the dyes and then it darkens the color. So if you do not want a color that is perhaps towards brownish or sort of like darkish tones of red, then we should be avoiding iron vessels for this dyeing purposes. Now the other thing is that iron mordants. So for example, this, of course, that different kind of the iron oxides and the chlorides, the ones we have. So the thing is that those kind of, and the sulfate salts, the iron sulfate salts, the ones we have. So we sometimes people use it for darkening the dyes, but it also sort of gives dull tones. So if you do not want dull tones in our fabric or fiber, so then we should not be using iron vessels or iron mordants for dyeing. So this solution which is now being prepared, I'll let it sit, I'll let it simmer for a little more time, and meanwhile we'll go back to the process of dyeing the fiber and this fabric in black. Alright, so here as you have seen that we have three things in the frame, and the first thing is, of course, we have the this solution, the myrobalan or the Hartaki solution, and here we have the fiber, the yarn, and then the fabric we already had. So we had immersed this fabric in this myrobalan solution. As you can see it here, it obtained this pale yellow shade, and here we have the one in which this thread was tied, and so that this will also have the tie-dye effect. I'm just keeping it separate here. So these are the fabrics we have which can be used for dyeing, and now we also have the yarn. The yarn and the fabric, as you can see, they have obtained this pale yellow color that came from myrobalan. So in some processes people prefer to sort of drain the myrobalan powder from the water and then immerse the fabric or the fiber, but I prefer to keep the powder in the water, because eventually when we will be dyeing that, when we will be washing that, the powder will eventually go off. But when the powder is there in the water, let it just sit there. So what I'll do is, I have the fabric here and the yarn here, which are sort of dipped and soaked in this myrobalan solution for around half an hour, and now we have them here ready, and this can be dyed. So here we also have two different solutions. The first one is the alum solution that we already had. So we have boiled this alum solution, and so now we can use it for treating the fabric or the fiber which will be used in the red. So what I'll do is, I'll put this yarn in the alum solution here, and I'll also let it sit in this alum solution for next 10-15 minutes, so that the mordant gets to the fiber properly. At the same time, what I'll also do is, I'll put another piece of fabric in the mordant as well. Make sure that the fabric and the yarn is immersed in this mordant solution properly. When this is being sort of soaked in this solution, now what we'll do is, we will try using the black solution for dyeing the pieces of fabric in black. So for that, what we will do is, we will use these two other pieces of fabric what we already have, those are soaked in the myrobalan solution. Now for this black, the one that I have already mentioned, that how this is prepared for a period of over a month. Now the thing is that in this case, that for black, since this natural dye, it requires a bit of more encouragement from tannin. So we would see that if we dip regular piece of fabric in this black solution, it will not create the desired effect. But then if we put the fabric that is dipped in the myrobalan solution, it will turn black or much darker in tone. So first what we will do is, we will put this piece of fabric which we have already tied. So one thing we can also do, that there is this one place where we have already tied before the myrobalan solution. Now we can also make another tie here where we have already the myrobalan solution. That way we can probably be able to see the difference in this tie-dye process, that what happens if an area is already sort of treated with tannin and then dipped in the black solution, what happens, and then the area which is not really treated with tannin and then dipped in the black solution, then the difference between them. So what I'll do is I'll just put another piece of thread here, tie it, this is what we have, and now I'll just dip it in the black solution. So you see that once this fabric is dipped in the black solution, it changes its color, and then slowly once we dip it again, it will turn darker and darker. We will keep this piece of fabric little bit in the air before we dip it again in the black solution. Meanwhile, we will take the other piece of fabric, and as you can see that I already had a little bit of black solution in my hand. So as I am touching this fabric, it is already getting the impression of this color. So this way one can also play with the tonality and textures by creating different kind of patterns and everything on this surface. So if you are using different kind of material, so for example if you are using feather, if you are using stone, if you are using blocks or whatever, so if you sort of use it on this myrobalan treated fabric, then it immediately receives the color. So this is how you can also see that the different kind of shades and different kind of images, those are created on this surface. So what I'll do is I'll not dip the entire fabric in black, but I'll just partially do that, leave it for a while, and then I'll remove it. So this is the other piece of fabric we have. We are just keeping it here for drying, and then we already had this another piece of fabric which was tie-dyed, and then we'll immerse that in this solution again. We'll leave it for a while. And then we'll remove it. I think this black dyeing is done now for now. So we'll just keep it here, and I'll also demonstrate the same with a piece of fabric which is not really dyed, not really treated with myrobalan. We'll try to demonstrate that, how the difference takes place. So here we have a piece of fabric which is washed in water and with soda ash, but this is not treated in this myrobalan solution. So this is, you can see the color which is not really pale yellow, but this is white or kora, whatever you call it. And so this is something that now we will be dipping that in this black solution to see that what kind of color it creates. We'll leave it here for a minute so that it can soak the color. So this is the fabric we have, which is washed in water and soda ash, and then this is dipped in this black solution, this fermented black solution we have. So this is the fabric we have which is not treated with myrobalan, and you can see the difference that when a fabric is treated with myrobalan, so this is the difference. So this is the fabric that is treated in myrobalan, and this is the fabric that is not treated in myrobalan. Both are dipped in the same dye, but here we hardly see any difference in the tone, but this one has turned black. So this is the kind of difference we can see it here. Is the same goes here as well, that how the color difference here you can see for the myrobalan treatment, and here this is completely different. Now as we see this, if we then dip this same piece of fabric in the myrobalan solution, then you see the color again changes, and then the color darkens. We will do the same for this fabric as well, the one which is tie-dyed. We'll just put this in this myrobalan solution for darkness. The black color which is achieved through this process, you can still see that there is a difference, that something that is not initially treated with myrobalan, it still has this dark umber tone, and this one which was treated with myrobalan, so it has already obtained dark black. So this is the kind of difference we can still see it here in this fabric. But then what I'll do is I'll just dip both of these things in the myrobalan solution and let it sit for a while. When you are dipping this fiber or the fabric in the solution, make sure that you take them out repeatedly, squeeze them to get rid of the solution, and then put them back in the water again or the solution again. So we'll continue this process here and the rest will follow. So we have these two pieces of fabric dipped in this myrobalan solution. So you can see that the myrobalan solution also has turned brownish black, and it usually sort of like if we keep the myrobalan solution for a while, and if it comes in touch with any kind of iron content, in this case we had the this fabrics which are treated in this iron based dye, so it immediately turns dark. So here we have these two pieces of fabric here, and then what I'll do is I'll squeeze out the water, the solution, and I have two pieces of fabric here, and one piece, this one is the one which was not really initially treated in myrobalan solution. So you can see that how it obtained this dark umber tone, this dark brown, and it is not completely black. Now compared to that one, we have this one. So this one was treated in myrobalan solution. So after washing, it was treated in myrobalan solution, then it was dipped in the black solution, and then we are treating it again in the myrobalan. So you can see the difference in the color. So this has turned darkish, it is now black, but this one is umber, dark umber. So once it gets dried, we can see the color difference even more prominently. So now what I'll do is I'll take out the knots to see that if there is any color difference or anything that had been sort of like done during this dyeing process. So you can see this rim which is created when this myrobalan treated fabric was dipped in this dye, but then I have also resisted that with this piece of cotton thread. Now we'll also take out this other area which we have resisted before myrobalan treatment to see that if there is any difference in there. So here you see the difference. So this area was not treated with myrobalan, because before myrobalan treatment we have put this area within these threads, and then we dipped it in the myrobalan, and eventually it was treated with the black dye and then myrobalan again. So that's the reason here we have this white or the kora, the color of this fabric, which was the original color of this fabric, intact, almost intact. Whereas in this case you can see that yes, you can see the resist, but it is much more sort of subdued. It is not as prominent as the one we see at the center. So this is the kind of difference we can see when the fiber or the fabric is treated with myrobalan or not. Also, like what does the tannin content or the tannin rich haritaki does to the fabric when we are dyeing it with natural dyes. So here what I'll do is, we already have the this yarn and this piece of fabric that is dipped in alum solution. So it had been dipped in this solution for half an hour. So I'm guessing that by now it has already absorbed this mordant in it. So as I have mentioned that for yarn dyeing or for fabric dyeing, if we are dyeing the entire fabric in one color, so for those cases we do not really need to have the mordant treatment before the dyeing, or immersing into the dye bath. So some people would prefer to do it before, some people can prefer to do it after the process. So as I have as I have demonstrated that I am doing that before immersing it into the dye bath. So here I'll be immersing it into this dye bath and we'll see what kind of color it obtains. So I have already dipped the this yarn into the dye bath. Now I'll put this piece of fabric in the dye bath and see what happens. So this is already treated in myrobalan, and after that I have immersed it in this alum solution. So alum is the mordant that is used for red. So slowly we'll see what kind of color it obtains. While dyeing in red, we also need to have the fiber and the yarn dipped in this dye bath for 10 minutes or so, and then we can see that if we have achieved the desired depth of the color, we can remove it or we can keep it in the water. So for mordanted fabric, when we are doing mordant painting or mordant printing, after a point it cannot be kept in the dye bath, because what happens is then the alum or the mordant starts spreading in the dye bath, and then the entire fabric would be infected, or I should not say infected, but it will have the mordant everywhere in the fabric, which is probably not be the most desired thing in a modern painting or modern printing. So that is definitely not the case when we are doing just plain fabric dyeing or plain just like plain dyeing, which will have uniform shade of madder. So that will have a different thing altogether. We'll leave this fabric in the water for a while in the solution so that it can absorb the dye as much as it can. As you can see, the yarn has already sort of started showing its difference in the color. The fabric is slowly turning reddish or brick red. So we have this two pieces of fabric here, and in this case we had this two pieces of fabric which we already dyed in myrobalan and after that in black dye. So as I have mentioned it that this piece of fabric was first treated in myrobalan, then it was treated in the black dye, this fermented iron solution, and then after that it was again like sort of just dipped in the myrobalan solution and then washed. So in this one you can see this black color here, and then also we have sort of like tied this area. So this area was tied before myrobalan treatment, and that's the reason you can see the rim which is almost of the color or the original color of this fabric, so that you can see. After that we have this rim which we tied during the myrobalan solution treatment. So after that the fabric was treated with the myrobalan solution, then we tied this rope, this thread here, and that's the reason we have this slightly sort of fade, subdued kind of a tie-dye effect, which is different from the one we see at the center. And this piece of fabric which we have in slightly kind of a dark umber tone, and in this one what we did was we did not really treat it in myrobalan solution, so we just washed it, directly dipped it in the black dye, and after dipping it in the black dye we showed the color difference, and then we dipped it in the myrobalan solution. So it was post treated. So the post treatment with tannin and pre treatment with tannin, so these are the kind of difference one can see in terms of the color difference. Alright, so here we have this madder solution, Manjishta solution, and in this one we put this piece of fabric, and then also we have put this yarn. So the yarn, as I have mentioned, that this is hand spun yarn from local cotton, and you can see how the madder has sort of like been absorbed in this cotton yarn, and you can see the kind of color that it had obtained. It has this rich sort of this blood red color which is characteristic of Indian madder. So you have this color here, and then we also have the fabric. The fabric has not really received the kind of dye that the yarn has received. So what we will do is we'll just take this yarn and the fabric out of the solution, we'll wash it, and we'll just sort of like see the color and the difference. Alright, so in the final result of this entire activity that we had, so in this case what we see is we have this two pieces, one is of the yarn, one is of the fabric, and these two pieces were dyed in myrobalan and then in the alum mordant solution, and then it was dipped in the Manjishta solution. So Manjishta sort of like gives this brick red tone, and so that we have here, this is a very characteristic tone that is achieved from Manjishta. So we have it here, and is the same color that we have in this yarn as well. So in the yarn we can see little bit of like the difference in terms of the tonal variation one can see, and that is because of like of course that if we are dyeing yarn in a smaller pot, there is always this sort of like the possibility of not the dyeing is not always been done uniformly. So that is the reason you can see like certain kind of like differences in the yarn. But then like for yarn dyeing, of course we need much bigger pot for doing these things properly and much more in a uniform manner. Since it was for this demonstration and just to show the step-by-step processes, so I did not really go for a elaborate setup here. So we can see the colors which are achieved from Manjishta and myrobalan, and here we have the ones which are already been dyed in myrobalan and black dye. So, and as I have mentioned, this one and this one as the difference. So this one and this one here from Manjishta. So from the dyeing activity that we had today, these are the colors we have obtained so far. So as we have already seen that how dyeing is done, so in continuation of that I am showing here little more of yarn dyeing. And so here we have completely undyed yarn from where we started our journey. So this is not even washed, so this is just plain hand spun cotton undyed yarn, and then it needs to be washed, of course with warm water, and then like boiled in the soda ash solution, and after that we have sort of treated it with myrobalan, and then whatever the colors we need to achieve, we went for that. And then this is the one we can see, and this is dyed in black. So this is the same process in which we have the myrobalan treatment, and then it was dipped in the black solution. So this is how this color is achieved. Then what we also have, this one we have from indigo. So indigo is the color that indigo is the dye from which different shades of blue is achieved. So here we can see that how indigo is treated. So for indigo we need not boil the dye bath. So for indigo we need to have a cold vat. So for that reason we usually get indigo cake. Then we have some kind of a reducing agent, and then we have also some kind of a glucose or fructose. So I usually go for tamarind, and then I also go for lime or tuna, which is used for painting purpose at home and everything. So then tuna is used for the reducing agent, and then of course we also have the glucose or the fructose, that is of course this glucose, the sugar based sort of material which is obtained from the from any kind of like ripe fruit, and I prefer going for tamarind. So when the dye is like sort of treated with these solutions, and then it is left for fermentation, and after the fermentation the yarn which is washed, which is, you may treat it with myrobalan, you may not treat it with myrobalan. So when you treat myrobalan, when you treat the yarn with myrobalan and dip it in the indigo, then it kind of obtains a slightly greenish kind of a tone. If you want that, you can go for it, or you can go for this plain white or like Kora yarn, and then go with the indigo dipping. So this is how this color is achieved. So in this color we did not really use myrobalan. So in this one, this is just plain handspun cotton, and then this cotton yarn is then of course sort of washed and then sort of boiled, and then it was dipped in the indigo vat. Now this color that we have here, this one is achieved from catechu or katha. So it's a light solution of katha, and for which you see that there is a shade of brown which is achieved from this process, and this brownish shade is something that is of course that when you are using more of katha or catechu, that definitely gives you a better brown shade, and this one is a lighter solution. So once you start using the dyes, then you can also do your own permutation combination and find out that what kind of shade you want, and according to that you can also sort of tweak the amount of dye material that goes into the water or the solution. So this is how this particular shade is achieved. It's a light brown. Then we also have this black that I have already mentioned. This is a color which is achieved by dipping it into myrobalan first, then then in indigo, and then it's a very light indigo dipping which was done, and then it was treated with a weak solution of black. So it is not this strong solution of black, but then the black solution was further diluted in water, and it was treated with this one, and that sort of gave this color. It's like a sort of like a shade of gray that has achieved, but then it also has a hint of yellow in it. So these are the kind of color variations you can do with the combination of both cold dye and hot dye, and this is also another shade of gray, and it goes without saying that how this is achieved. So this is definitely achieved by first myrobalan treatment and then dipping it into a weak solution of black. So this is how this color is achieved, and so this is something that we can see in terms of how different all these different shades are achieved. And this is this yarn that we already have today, as we have sort of dyed it here. So this is the one that is treated in manjistha. This is the one that is treated in this fermented iron and jaggery solution, and these are the shades of gray that we have, in which little bit of indigo is used here, and of course myrobalan is used here. This one is myrobalan and a weak solution of black. This one is undyed cotton yarn. This is the yarn which is treated in a weak solution of katta or catechu, and this is the one that is treated in indigo vat. So there are different shades you can achieve by doing this kind of combination of dyes. And this kind of dyes, when this is used in the yarn, of course then they are made into woven fabric, but then also one can do dyeing on the woven fabric as well, as we have already done today. And when doing this thing, make sure that you wash them properly, especially the ones in which iron mordant is used or any kind of iron is used. So for example, the ones which are toned as, which obtained black or dark tones, so these ones need to be washed properly so that no excessive iron element is left in the fabric, because iron is also something that is considered as corrosive, and over the period of time we see that how the iron sort of eats up the fabric or the fiber. So that's the reason when we see certain kind of historical modern painted or modern dyed fabrics from 16th century, 17th century and so on, we see that the areas which were printed or painted with black, they started sort of peeling off. So that is also a reminder for us that a lot of these fabrics, they were not really washed properly, or they were washed during the preparation of this fabric, but then once they were started being used, they were not really washed. So all these fabrics, they need to be used and washed at a particular interval of time, and that is the key towards sort of maintaining them properly. And of course, a lot of them are light sensitive, even though here the colors or the dyes that we have used so far, none of them are light sensitive, but then colors like lac, colors like sapan wood or Brazil wood, they are light sensitive. So those are some of the things, they also sort of matter the performance of dyes. And it's not just the performance of dye when we are dyeing it, but I'm talking about the performance of the dyes over the period of time. So these are some of the things we can remember when we are thinking about dyeing, when we are thinking about implementing this practical skill into into actions. But of course that with different kind of experimentations, one can always expand the perimeters of this kind of activities and experimentations. Thank you.